Welcome, everybody. The name of the presentation today is Strategic CRM for Oracle HCM. Happy to have everybody joining us here from all around the world. And my name is Ian Alexander. I head up marketing here for Talemetry. I'm joined by Stephen Schwander, who is Director of Client Solutions for Talemetry as well. Stephen, welcome.
Okay, it's good to be here. Thank you.
We always do these things at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and it's afternoon for half the country and morning for the other half. So good morning or good afternoon to everybody, depending on where you are. And today we're going to talk about CRM. This is the agenda. What is strategic CRM? What are some of the recruiting challenges that we see as a software organization that works with hundreds of clients and prospects, over the last several years. The reasons for implementing CRM strategies to improve recruiting outcomes, and then what most of the conversation is going to be around is the key practices for success. And again, these are practices that we've gathered over time working with organizations very much like yours. So before we jump right into it, want to say a couple of things. First of all, we welcome questions, so please feel free to answer questions when they come to you. There should be a little webinar console on the right side of your screen or on some side of your screen where you can chat in your questions. If they are appropriate for the conversation, we'll try and work them in as we go. If not, we'll definitely hit everything by the end of the presentation. Again, a little bit about Talemetry. We are a recruitment marketing platform which enables organizations to implement strategies and measure the effectiveness of those strategies for everything from candidate attraction and job distribution to sourcing to CRM, candidate relationship management, email campaigns, engagement of candidates, talent networks, all the way through to candidate experience solutions for career sites and applications and mobile-friendly candidate engagement. So we do all of that. Today we're focusing on CRM, which is really what we're going to talk about in the next slide, which is a lot of different definitions of CRM. So we're going to level set, and I'm going to let Stephen jump in here and talk about how we define strategic CRM and what it really is out there in terms of what we're seeing. So Stephen, jump in.
Sure, absolutely, and it almost sounds silly to start with a definition, but part of my role here at Talemetry is I get to go to our prospective clients and help them sort of figure out, what tools they want to use to drive specific strategies throughout the organization. And I've literally been in clients that have said, I don't want to see a CRM. I just want to find candidates and send emails to them. I've had others that said, I don't want to see a CRM, I just want a contact management system, right? And so the definitions are a little bit all over the place, and I think partly because of two things. Number one, we all go to the conferences to learn how to do recruitment better, and there's a lot of sophisticated, albeit not enterprise scalable tools out there, and others of us are probably more prone toward the operations side of the house, where we really need to make all of these things work together. So from our perspective, strategic CRM is basically using a software tool, right? Using the tools that are available to you to capture candidate data, to do some automation of your sourcing, to be able to segment large pools of candidates into the specific folks that you want, and to be able to engage that large candidate base. Obviously, the purpose is to be more proactive in your recruiting and to drive better applications, right? So for us, it's about building a very large but relevant talent pool. It's about being able to source from that talent pool and from outside of that talent pool. It's about being able to segment or organize that talent pool however it makes sense for you as an organization. It might be lists, it might be folders, it might be tags, but it's segmenting it into understandable groups of folks, and then really being able to engage with them in a way that makes sense and is it builds that relationship.
And Stephen, we have our first question. I think it gets the award for the most sensible question of the day, which is, so what do the initials stand for, CRM?
Yeah. So CRM comes out of the marketing background, right? So for us, and so it stands actually originally for contact relationship management. From our perspective, it stands for candidate relationship management, right? Because we in the recruiting realm, we're not selling widgets to potential clients, but we are managing. Building and managing relationships with candidates, right? So just in the definition itself, really tells you that it's very proactive.
Yeah, and that's the key part is the relationship management is what it's all about, is establishing those relationships and then managing them over time. So let's talk about a little bit about recruiting challenges. We know what it is now. What are some of the challenges that these strategies that we're going to talk about are designed to overcome? So Steve, why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. So, yeah, some of these challenges are pretty obvious, right? And you'll hear recruitment managers talk about them all the time, and they come back to haunt us, continually, right? So, CRM is going to drive results for some of these challenges. Number one is the high cost per hire, right? I think agency use went down for a while. It's going back up again, number one. Number two, we see clients that are spending a ton of money on job board advertising, which is still kind of seen as a necessary evil, but what they're not doing is doing a good job at determining where those results are coming from, and then really leveraging the data that comes in. So you got a high cost per hire from agency spends, job board spends, et cetera. You have a difficult time finding candidates, right? So search tools are limited. You go into an ATS, can't find exactly what you're looking for, don't have the time to search all the multiple tools outside. There's disconnected candidate sources. So you might log into Monster and search in one way, and Career Builder and search in another way, and there's a disconnection between that experience. You've limited access to passive candidates, so what are the options on a career site engagement process for applicants just to say, look, I don't see a job there, but I'm kind of interested, so here's some information, and almost giving you permission to market to them, but that's limited in a lot of senses, and they just frankly have a difficult time meeting the hiring demand. I spoke to a potential client today who are always behind the 8 ball, and even when they meet the requirements, they feel like they're behind the 8 ball. There's a lack of scalable engagement. So, some recruiters are doing a real good job sending out emails to 2 or 3 people at a time and keeping that very short list of relationships active. But some of our clients have, literally millions of candidates in their pipeline. How do you scale on that? How do you engage on that large a scale and still be pointed and not make it sound sort of stilly? And then also just kind of a standardization. So, recruiters are using different sources. You can't necessarily leverage from one recruiter source to another recruiter source. They're putting notes in different places, and they're not standardizing a process. So they're not gaining that standardization and the optimization. So as we jump into some of the strategies, again, I'm going to throw out another silly question. You kind of almost as silly as the definition question, and that's kind of if you want to go with a CRM tool, right? Or some clients will say, listen, we need more direct sourcing capability. They may not use the term CRM, but it's important to sort of understand what activities are they trying to support for their team. Are they trying to enable recruitment marketing that would kind of build a large centralized talent pool, right? So are they trying to build that proprietary database as large as they can, and then drive marketing efforts into that campaign, into that base? That's certainly an activity that's a good activity. Are they trying to support their recruiters with the ability to find that purple squirrel, right? To fill that specialized talent opening. So you have more of a strategic, organizational capability, or a tactical recruiter capability, or are they trying to help a sourcing function fill high volumes of positions, right? So they invite lots and lots of people to apply, and then use their ATS system to help kind of funnel the right candidates in. So, we see three interrelated but sometimes different activities, and the answer is that a good CRM tool can support all three of those activities above. So a couple of strategies we like to talk about when you're putting in a CRM tool or a CRM capability, or a candidate relationship mindset. The first strategy is really to develop and grow an overall talent pool. So I like to say to my clients, this is your competitive edge, right? The more relevant data you can pull into your CRM tool, so that you have a group of people from which to source and market, you're going to have a competitive edge. So the first thing is to grow that talent pool and get access to the data. The second strategy is to segment into pipelines, and the power of the system to segment your data is key. I've been in the recruitment realm for a couple of decades now, and I'm sort of a director, VP level if you were looking for for someone in a corporate realm. But I can't tell you how many emails I get in any given week inviting me to be a Taleo admin. And I'm like, well, what about my resume tells you that I would be interested in being a Taleo admin right now? It's not my resume. It's their lack of ability to segment their talent pool into the right segments, right? So you want to be able to do that powerfully. The next piece of strategy would be to implement talent networks that are aligned with those pipelines. So you're trying to build a sales pipeline, for instance. Well, build up a talent network of salespeople so that you can manage your engagement to that group. Give them a different experience when they come to your website, and give them different information than you might give your IT infrastructure pipeline, right? Next would be to share internal, external sourcing across recruiters. There should be incentives to grow the talent pool and share it across the organization, as opposed to just kind of having everything on my desktop, or as a recruiter, I own my own data, you can't have it, but you want to share that across the organization. Next, you want to engage talent pipelines with relevant content. You do that in two ways. I mentioned talent networks in the bullet a couple of points earlier, and that's about creating a specifically targeted online experience for that talent network. So that helps you to start engage with relevant content. And then the other way that you can engage with relevant content is very simply through email campaigns, right? And sending the right information to the right targeted audience. And then finally, you want to be able to standardize, measure, and refine your activities and results as a result of what you are standardizing and measuring. So it's not just about source of hire, although that's phenomenally important, but it's also about how effective and efficient your team is in building the talent pool, engaging the talent pool, inviting them to apply, right? So you can measure all of those activities across the process.
Okay, so with that, just to make this a little bit more interactive, and I think this is always great when I know when I attend webinars, is to see sort of what the lay of the land is with the attendees. So what strategies are important to your organization? I'm going to launch a poll here, and if you can all just click the strategy or strategies that are most important to you right now as an organization, or that you're considering or investigating. It'll help us all kind of understand sort of where we're coming from in terms of our interest as we're viewing this. So I'm going to leave this open for a little bit. We've got 42% have voted, so give it a little bit more time.
Ian, I'm a little disappointed I can't vote. I'm hitting the button there and it won't work. This says I can't vote. So I vote for all of the above.
You can't vote with felonies in this country. Sorry. All right, so we've got about 2/3 of you voted. Leave it open just a couple more seconds. Love to hear from everybody. All right, so I'm going to close the poll just so we can keep moving here, and I'm going to share the results with you really quickly. So it looks like it's fairly distributed, but increasing proactive sourcing is certainly one that we hear a lot, and that's the one that sort of is in the lead there. and developing pipelines ahead of need. And Stephen, you sort of touched on those strategies about really building your ability to get out ahead of demand for positions and not being constantly reactive. So I think those two are very interrelated. Good. Okay, so we'll have a couple more polls as we go along here, and jump back in here. So the next thing I wanted to share with you is, as we work with our hundreds of clients with our recruitment marketing platform, as well as many prospects that we talk to and engage, we sort of built this maturity model. So we call it the recruitment marketing maturity model. And just quickly to go over it, it kind of moves from the left to more basic, all the way through to the right to fully optimized recruitment marketing. And so this maturity model deals with everything from candidate attraction to candidate sourcing and engagement to candidate experience and conversion rates and all those types of things, because that's what we provide as a vendor. But we're honing in here on the candidate relationship portion of this. So if you look at the left side, when it comes to outbound sourcing, a very basic organization might be characterized by do some basic database searching of different job board databases. You might have some basic ATS searching of past applicants. It's typically characterized by overuse of agencies. And when it comes to engagement and nurturing, it's really not much more than an apply auto response to an application. Then you move into more basic efficiencies and a sort of functional sourcing and CRM. Now you're starting to see centralized multi-database sourcing, so you may have a tool that helps you search multiple candidate sources at one time. And there's much more proactive outreach by individual recruiters to individual candidates. Now you move to more modern, and I would say that most of our organizations that we engage with are kind of moving from this functional side to the more modern side, so the third pillar here. And this is where we start to see things like talent networks for engaging passive candidates. Again, we talked about sort of segmenting and pipelining candidates against future need. And then more use of email outreach, more sophisticated use of email outreach to candidates on a one-to-one basis, and a more formalized relationship and process in engaging agencies and soliciting agencies for sourcing jobs. And on the engagement and nurturing side, again, we're seeing a lot of proactive nurturing and engagement with your talent networks and aligning them with your pipelines, and more mass content-based candidate outreach. So that keeping those candidates warm with relevant content to them, letting them know what your organization is like, and moving beyond just sort of, hey, would you like this job, Stephen? Would you like to be a Taleo admin? Moving beyond that, really getting into deeper candidate relationship sort of outreach. And then finally, on the fourth pillar is where I look at that third pillar as more activity-based. So you're starting to do these activities to increase your recruiting outcomes. And then the fourth pillar is about measuring those activities and really optimizing your entire recruitment operations around being as efficient as possible. So understanding what types of email campaigns are getting the most clicks and getting the most hires, really understanding what percentage of your hires are coming from direct outsourcing, outbound sourcing versus job ad distribution, et cetera. So it's taking those analytics and really putting them to work. And that's sort of where we see the fourth pillar. So as we go, and I should say, we are going to be doing emailing all these slides out to you. So if you want to look at that in more depth, you will automatically get an email with those slides in there. So so that leads to the next question. So which level of the recruitment marketing maturity model do you see yourself from a CRM standpoint? So I'll launch that poll and kind of see where the group of us here sort of fall along there. We'll leave this open for a bit here. Got about a third have voted so far, so if you can, pop in there, click, get as many as we can. And we're pushing to about 2/3, and it's slowing down, so I'm going to close the poll here. Last chance. All right, let's see sort of where we ended up there. So, yeah, so we have the largest portion at sort of the level 2 functional. We've got a fair amount at basic and a fair amount at modern, and quite frankly, the optimized side of things, kudos to you on that. One of the most difficult parts of moving to optimized is getting those analytics and getting them across in a homogeneous way across all your activities. So kudos to you for doing that. Stephen, any comments on the poll?
No, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad folks are able to follow that, because it's really a key concept, that whole maturity model thing, and I think it helps. Again, I always step back for these things, and I know organizations I've worked with in the past have always had uber sources in them, right? The folks that can find anybody and are those really, really good recruiters and sourcers. But when you step back and look organizationally, that's what this maturity model is about. And so it's a really good tool if you are responsible for help driving some strategy into your organization. So no, it makes a whole lot of sense in terms of where the poll ended up as well.
Great. So let's move on here. All right. So Stephen, let's talk about some of the key CRM practices that we're seeing around sourcing and engagement.
Sure, absolutely. We're going to start first of all with the ATS, right? So that stands for Applicant Tracking System, and that's basically the system where your applicants end up, and your recruiters and hiring managers, et cetera, are using that to manage the selection and assessment process, right? So it's kind of basic. I mean, I'm old enough to be around when I put in first generation ATSs in a couple of different companies back in the late 90s and early 2000s. But CRM needs to move beyond that, right? There's only so much you can do inside of the ATS from a proactive marketing perspective. So it really does require additional tools, and as we're going to see in a slide or two down the road, integrating to that ATS is important. So the ATS is not irrelevant at all, but you need to be able to move beyond it. So the first key practice, and I said this earlier in terms of the strategy, is kind of grow your pool, right? So you want to establish, what is that centralized talent pool? Where am I holding all of the data? I was with a client, recently, said, well, we only want this kind of data in the system. We don't want all of that other stuff. Well, you never know when all that other stuff, becomes relevant, and managing it as it comes in is very difficult. Now, there are some very manual CRM tools where you absolutely want to manage, the data that's coming in. But if you do a good job integrating with your ATS, integrating with your external sources, then basically you can't worry about building it too big, right? Because you want to, bring as many into that pool as you can, so that you have, some control over your data, and you're not data dependent on other sources. So you want to make talent pool growth a priority. And actually track what your recruiters are doing to help drive people into that talent pool. You want to be able to funnel all of your attraction and your sourcing activities into that talent pool. You don't want to be spending a ton of money on advertising and job distribution and all of that good stuff, and only have it apply into applications that are one and done. But you want to funnel all that into your growing pool. So we have a poll question here. How many measure your talent pool?
So thanks for jumping in while I was on mute there, Steve. So let's do a quick poll here. How many people are actively measuring the size of their talent pool? It's a key, it seems very basic, but it's a key metric for recruiting organizations that are moving towards level 4. All right, so we got about 2/3 voting. In order to keep it moving here, I'm going to close it. So last chance, and let's see what we got. All right, so we have more people don't know than know, which is probably dependent on sort of what your role is in the organization. And a fair amount that are, a good third of the people on the call here that are measuring that. So again, kudos, and for the don't knows and the knows, there's definitely something to explore for the future.
Excellent. And again, one very easy way is to know how much data is in your ATS, but of course, we've already talked about that pool being so much bigger than that, right? So in terms of measuring and understanding what that is. So our next key practice is don't forget the talent networks. And I do run into a number of clients who have some sort of opt-in capability on their career site. Maybe before somebody applies for a job, they say, "Hey, join our talent network. Give us your email and some preferences." And basically, what they have is a job recommendation engine, right, or job alert engine that's been around since the dawn of the ATS. But what we tend to recommend is a deeper and wider use of talent networks, so that you integrate your talent networks with your overall talent pool. You have, the neat thing about talent networks is it's opt-in. You know that people have got some skin and interest in the game because they've opted in, number one. Number two, you can ask, some more information from them. In the past, we used to ask for preferences when people were coming in, but you can be very creative about the types of information you gather so that you can segment on that data later on. It gives you better access to passive candidates who, not necessarily wanting to apply for a job, but it would be interested in learning more about your company. So if you have a proactive marketing capability, here's the way to capture that data. And I already said you can get a little bit more data from them so that you can you can target your emails to them and send appropriate content rather than the types of emails that I told you I'm getting, right? Or maybe that's what they think about me. I don't know. Anyway, and then you want to be able to map your talent networks to your talent pipeline. So you don't want just one, huge one, unless you can do a really good job of segmenting that. Sometimes it makes sense to set up several of them. So if I've got a lot of finance need, then let's set up a finance pipeline and back that with a finance talent network, so that we can do a much better job tracking what's happening there, measuring what's happening there, sending out relevant content. So don't forget those talent networks.
Yeah, and we talk about more data. I mean, what we're really talking about there is it's always a balancing act of you ask for too much data and your response rates go down. You ask for not enough data, and then it's more difficult to search for the right candidates that you're looking for through your talent network, and it's also more difficult to give them relevant content. So, think about things like resume extraction. Let the candidate upload their resume very quickly, or use a social profile, like a LinkedIn profile, to just opt in very quickly. Those are ways that you can really easily make it easy for candidates to give you a lot of information about themselves because they want to. You've got them in a position where they're saying, we like your company. We're interested in engaging with you. So if you make it easy for them to give you good information, then that just makes your talent pool that much more valuable for you as you're sourcing in the future against it.
That's a good point. If you can single click, get somebody's LinkedIn profile data into your talent network, now you don't have to ask them questions that are on there already. Now they might be okay with 2 or 3 quick questions, right? So it's a really good point. So we mentioned that the ATS is not irrelevant. As a matter of fact, it can be incredibly relevant. So you want to be able to integrate your ATS into your CRM. What some folks that have CRM capability in the company but don't have the ATS integration are dependent on the recruiters taking the extra effort to copy paste all of the data over to their CRM for those candidates that they want to keep track of. If you can integrate with your ATS, then your CRM tool will automatically start off with all of that past data. So we have one client that started off with 10 million profiles when they went live with their CRM tool because they were integrated into their, in that case it was a PeopleSoft background. We've got one client that came in and said, well, we don't want to integrate our ATS data because that seems like a lazy way to source. They got into the system and realized, wow, we could really use some data to start this process with, and really discovered that a lot of their past applicants who maybe didn't get a job for whatever reason were still good for future jobs. So they started integrating that data over, and it totally changed their success rate for CRM. So you want you want to be able to use that valuable source for future hires, and you want to be able to have some asynchronous integration there.
Yeah, imagine being able to do one search in your CRM that would give you past applicants that are relevant to your search, people that are within your talent networks that are relevant to your search, as well as people that might be in external databases like Monster or Indeed that are relevant to your search, and you get them all together. Wouldn't that be good, Stephen?
That would be delightful. It's going to make segmentation and targeting a lot easier.
Yes, yes, and that is possible.
So another key CRM practice is sort of to be proprietary, right? This kind of goes along with building the talent pool. This is really just another reason why you want to build your own talent pool. That's because you want to be proprietary. You want to have that, that edge from a talent perspective, so that you maximize all your resume searches. You pull your LinkedIn candidates over into your CRM, so you're not necessarily dependent on them all the time. You make sure that all your advertising, talent network, database searches, etc., all that data is available to you, and you pull these qualified candidates into your pool, and once you've downloaded them, right, or uploaded them, you own them, right? This is your data, and it's a precious resource.
And the more that you invest in it, and the more data that you get in there, whether that's additional candidates or whether that's additional information about each candidate, the less you will spend over the long run, because this becomes your primary source of sourcing, as opposed to paying for this stuff every single time.
So we've talked a little bit about this, and once you've got that large pool, you definitely want to be able to segment it. So again, I think every company is a little bit different. I've got one client that likes to segment their data into what they call lakes, ponds, and puddles, right? So it's a process-oriented segmentation. But then per job category or per job family. So they run a search, and they know what the top of the haystack looks like. They push that into a process segmentation. That's a little bit smaller group of people. They massage that data, grow that data, engage it, and decide which are the ones that are really relevant for our upcoming job openings. And they push those into the smallest group, and they start to market specifically open jobs to them. So they're segmenting both on job category, but then also on process and level of interest. But you want to be able to group your candidates into pipelines, certainly for key job families. You want to be able to have a really powerful search tool, so that as this database grows, can you imagine, I think our largest client database right now is around 15 million. You want to be able to search by skills, experience, location. How about this? How about searching by ATS data? Only show me people who got to an interview stage in this job family, right? So of all the data that's coming back from ATS, just show me that, right? So you want to be able to search to that level of clarity to build and segment your pools. You want that quick and easy way to gather some additional information for that segmentation. We talked about that in terms of, number one, the talent networks as people come into your system on an opt-in basis, but also from an ATS perspective. So all of that data that you capture from the ATS, when you integrate, you want to make sure if that data was relevant, that it comes into the CRM as well, so that you can use that for further segmentation. And again, this ensures that you send the messages, relevant messages, to the right recipients. Now I'm going to stop for a moment on this slide, because I think it makes sense to answer a question that came up about some examples of relevant information. This really is dependent on your organization and what your employee value proposition is out in the marketplace. So if you're a technology-related organization and the EVP is working with really cool technology, and you've segmented a talent network of web application developers or cloud engineers, then certainly you can use the tool to send out messages that are relevant to cloud engineers, maybe about the latest and greatest technology, or maybe it's about a win that your company had in a specific type of project, with maybe an invitation to come back and check you out on the website, or maybe an invitation to join your talent network, right? So that's an example of being able to identify potential cloud engineers and then sending out a keep warm type of message there. We've got a large client that likes around November to send out veterans appreciation notices. So they segment their talent pool in several different job families, looking at data that would let them know whether or not somebody's been a veteran, and they send out a little thank you and an invitation to come check out potential jobs that they might be interested in based on their experience. So, you know, it's things like that. It's things like the ability to kind of keep people warm, say, you know, here's what's happening in our organization. We expect to go through a growth spurt in another 3 or 4 months, so we hope that you keep looking forward to it. So it's typical messaging like that. And that leads us right into heating up the talent pool. So again, using these segmented lists, like I've said, to send out email campaigns and invite them to apply. And you want to be able to send regular mass emails, like, as we said, company news, surveys, internal content, etc. But you want a system that's going to either let a recruiter send out a tactical email to that individual person they're trying to contact, or that's going to let a marketing professional send out a mass email to 5,000 or 10,000 people in a single activity. And you want to make sure that that would be considered an enterprise class email campaign system. And what I mean by that is the ability for your CRM to, number one, make sure that all the emails are legitimate emails. Check that before they get sent out. Can do the proper warm up into the community, into the email community, so that you don't get you know, notification as a spammer, right? And then you want the ability to track what's happening with those emails, right? How many people are opening up the emails and taking activity? How many of them bounced? You know, did anybody unsubscribe and that sort of thing? So you really, you know, you want it to be simple, right? But you want it to be powerful. And then you want to be able to integrate your sourcing, right? So just make sure that your CRM you know, that your CRM system supports searching and sourcing from all sources, so not just your ATS, you know, not just data that's been uploaded into the system, but also some of that external data. You might have licenses to, you know, Dice and Indeed and Beyond and you know, you name it. Again, you want to make, because you want to build that proprietary growing talent pool, you want to make sure that you have a federated search capability, meaning you come to your CRM and you search all of those sources and have a really simple way to get data in. You know, that's a little bit blue sky because not every data source has the capability to be integrated to, right? But some of those niche sites have really good data. So then you also want to be able to have a really simple way for your recruiters to find people either on the web or in an unintegrated solution, and that data into your CRM so that you can do all of the things that we've talked about prior. Right? We talked a little bit about silver medalists, but you know, do you have the capability in your CRM to very simply discover a job would probably be good targets for a future opening, right? So, you know, some companies will actually try to use their ATS to flag them. I used to work for a company that called those folks hot rejects. That usually doesn't go over well. So what typically happens is that, you know, you'll have a disposition status. This person was not hired. Why were they not hired? Because somebody else was hired. Not because they weren't qualified, but because somebody else was hired. Can you imagine if your CRM tool could search for everybody who wasn't hired because somebody else was hired in a specific job family? You know, that's one very simple way to, you know, to tap silver medalists, right? And so there's all sorts of strategies to be able to do that, but you want to be able to find them and market them and build a proper segmentation in your CRM tool. So
that gets us to the poll.
There we go. I was afraid you might be on mute.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I learned from my past mistakes. So how many actively remarket jobs to silver medalists? We'll launch the poll here. Interested in how many people are currently doing that and view that as a priority within their hiring practices. Got about a third of the people have voted so far, so jump on there.
Ian, while they're saying this, just some of my past experience as a recruiter when I started in this business as a headhunter on Wall Street. We didn't have the internet yet, but we did have the capability to buy resumes, and boy, did we buy resumes. And I remember we used to enjoy buying 2 or 3-year-old resumes, because those are folks who are, who were looking for a job, 3 or 4 years ago, that might be in that same space where they want to move again. And as a headhunter, right, that's where you want to find them. And so we always had this practice of mining older data. And a really good CRM tool, and that's what we're talking about, silver medalists, is the ability to mine that older data. A really good CRM tool is going to allow you to mine some of that older data, send messages that, if nothing else, are aimed at refreshing that data, right? So some of our clients are taking their old candidate data from the ATS, running marketing campaigns against them and saying, come back and join our talent network. And in so doing, they're now getting the freshest resumes from those folks, and they can even segment them even better. So there's lots of fun strategies when you start talking about older data, in addition to the silver medalist.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's look out. We've got 53% that are actively doing that, 34% that aren't, and 13% that don't know. So interesting. We'll put that back in the hot rejects file and move on here. So continuing with the key sourcing practices, Stephen, search first.
Yeah, I think this is probably a good general, talent acquisition strategy alone, is that, it's almost inevitable that we're going to post jobs out, if to no place other than Indeed, right, or one of the other boards, right? So we know that marketing is always a piece of it, and our gut reaction is always to get it out into the marketplace, as fast as we can. But we would recommend that you utilize your CRM as a sourcing mechanism, and just go ahead and search first, right? Or search at the same time, because your job advertising should be automated too. But utilize your CRM search tools, pinpoint talent that you already have, and then send them invites to apply for a job, right? It's really quick, takes about 5 minutes, and all of a sudden you've got messages in people's email inboxes, as opposed to waiting for them to run across a job on Indeed or beyond, etc.
Yeah, that's the manifestation of moving to more proactive, is having the kind of CRM infrastructure that's going to allow you to have that search first orientation and be more proactive, and then more scalable, because the larger that grows, the more throughput you're going to have in terms of filling future positions. And that leads right into feed pipelines.
Sure, and we've talked a little bit about this in terms of segmentation, but segmentation is about finding a bunch of people and putting them in the right places. Once you've got those pipelines built up, then you want the mechanism to continue to build those pipelines. So they might be folders, so your CRM should be able to manage folders in a very dynamic way, so that as candidates get added there, maybe a workflow or message is launched from there, and you want to be able to build a mechanism and then continue to feed it, and track that your recruiters are doing that, right, and see what results that has. You want to be able to search passive candidates, right? So your talent networks, again, are a great place to search for passive candidates, or close to passive candidates. The truly passive candidate is the one that's not going to move, if, when, or ever. But if you can warm up that passive talent by giving them a place to be, in terms of your talent network, then you're able to drive really good marketing messages out to them. Combining this strategy with the one before on LinkedIn, for instance, is if you can help find candidates that you want to target within a LinkedIn environment and invite them to join your talent network, you now are feeding your pipeline and growing your ability to actually quickly communicate relevant jobs to a passive candidate group of folks. And then how about soliciting referrals, right? we get a lot of clients are using their CRM to support their employee referral program, right? So it might be that you do nothing but very simply create an internal talent network of people that are interested in sharing your jobs and segmenting that internal group of talent by the types of talent they might know, and you just send those folks a mass email that says, hey, who do you know? Invite them in. Right? So don't forget that referrals is a legitimate source to not only fill open jobs, but to continually build your talent pool and feed your pipeline. And then I think we've been saying this right along, right? Search, send, and measure, right? So we've got some targeted search lists that you maintain. Maybe automating some of that search. Once you've got a really good search that works for you, keep it running, automate that, identify the new people that come in and send them out an email. On a mass basis, if you on a regular basis send large emails to folks, you can measure what's coming back, and then you want to be able to measure results of all that activity. I don't care if it's a single email to a single person or it's a mass email to 5,000 people. You want to be able to measure those results and find out what kind of conversion did you have. How many people who I sent an email to joined a talent network? How many people who joined a talent network did I send another email to apply for a job? And how many of those folks invited, right? How many people did my recruiter add to the talent pipeline so that I could do all of that, right? So you want to continue to search, send, and measure. And then, of course, always be sourcing, right? So again, this just goes along with feeding that pipeline, right? But you create a culture and then also a tool then that supports that culture, where maybe you always have open positions. You've got maybe high turnover positions, or positions that are critical to the next growth phase of your organization. Even though the ATS may have shut down for actual applicants, keep your sourcing mechanism open for business, so you're always sourcing into those pipelines and inviting new people to come in. And then, as best you can, standardize. I've done a lot of work with our clients around CRM process, and the ones that are most successful are the ones that are simplest, right? And are getting their recruiters to a very simple process, but a measurable process, so they can monitor results. So they want to standardize, but they want to standardize around some very simple approaches, so that the process is simple, but that the data is easy to find. Whether that's candidate-related data or process-related data. So standardizing and developing best practices is definitely key to success. And we've said it a number of times, measure everything, right? So we talked about how large is your talent pool. How about how complex is your talent pool, right? Are you growing in the right pipelines? What sources are contributing, to the overall growth, but also to the quality of that growth? Usage, are recruiters and marketers and sourcers using the system? If they are, which activities are, yielding the most results? And engagement. So how often are your talent pool members being engaged by email? How many times are they coming back to maybe a landing page to check out new content, or updating their data with you, right? Can you monitor the open and the click rates so you know what's happening from a marketing perspective?
Yeah, and that usage one can be very, very simple. Some of our most successful clients, some of the implementation goals they've had is, one, get recruiters and sourcers using the system. So that's been a success criteria. You can sometimes jump too far down the road in terms of the results that you want to get from these metrics by, again, getting too far down the road. We want our cost per hire to go down. We want our cost per candidate to go down. Sometimes it's, oftentimes, all the time, it's about taking those one step at a time, using the analytics and the metrics to support your overall goals, and starting with things just like, we need to be more proactive with sourcing, so let's monitor who's using, when they're using, how much they're using, put programs in place to make sure it's easy for them to use and that they are using it. So that leads us to our next poll, which is, what metrics are you measuring right now? So let me pop that poll up here. And while this poll is open, Stephen, we do have a question, which is kind of around this, and I've kind of saved it for this point. What are some advanced metrics, data points you believe companies at the functional modern level are not measuring currently?
You know, I think, and I'm sure you'll have a view of this as well, Ian. But I think for me, it's breaking down the obvious, right? So, you know, our ATSs are pushing out whatever that final source of hire was, but we don't necessarily know what the overall results of our marketing efforts were, right? We know kind of where they came from the last time they came in to apply, but do we know, you know, what kind of conversion rates we have from somebody who reads a job ad or, you know, comes into our career site initially, maybe joins a talent network? You know, are we able to really measure the effectiveness of all of that ahead of the final click? So I think it's really, one thing is really opening up the source of hire story into a much more complex story. The second one would be around measuring things that, I mean, ultimately you want everything to end up in a higher activity, but how about measuring things that maybe don't? So for instance, you know, we talk a lot about building your talent pool and your talent pipeline and your talent network, but you know, what are the data elements that are showing you, you know, what activities are building that, number one, where the typical sources are coming from that data that you're pushing in and growing in that. So some of our clients now are really pushing us and we're being able to deliver reports that are talent pipeline focused rather than just job focused. Because if you're really nicely integrated with your ATS, a lot of that final application source data is going to come synchronized back into your CRM, and you can report on that final data, right? But before it hits your ATS, what's happening in your marketing and sourcing efforts, you know, ahead of that? And then number two, once they get into your ATS, you know, how well are you able to see, you know, the overall results from an overall pipeline right up to either source of hire, or if you're looking at, you know, steps prior to that in terms of quality. I know where my source of hire came from, but do I know where all my interviews came from, right? Or all those silver medalists came from. So those are just a couple of examples of some things that that folks are doing, you know, pushing that top area.
Great. And as you're talking there, Stephen, source of hire is the highest we have here. Second highest being cost per hire, lowest being cost per applicant. So good information there. And so talk a little bit about, we've talked about some of our clients here. Steve, why don't you kind of give a little snapshot of two of our largest clients?
Sure. I think, you know, it's funny. I alluded a little bit to Seagate in an earlier comment about the client that came to us that just wanted a standalone CRM solution and didn't want any of their Taleo data in it. And so they were building all of that data from scratch, and they did a really phenomenal job with it. But the reality is, we finally convinced them they had a ton of really good data sitting in their Taleo system. So they went ahead and integrated that data. And you know, since they've come in, their overall talent pool has increased by 86% because they're being far more proactive about going out there and reaching new folks, either through integrated searching or pushing data in when they find data. So they see their growth rate around 10% per month. You know, that'll start to slow down after a while because, you know, the more targeted you are about your employees, right, and the more data you bring in, you're going to start getting to the top of that talent. So I would suspect that growth will start slowing down a little bit. You know, there are only so many of certain types of people in the world, but their recruiter jobs has been very strong, and I don't think it would have been strong if they didn't have some data to begin, you know, the whole mechanism with, right? And so they're growing their value by, you know, really maximizing all of their external database candidates, getting them into the system, retargeting them, you know, across the entire organization. Now, the Royal Bank of Scotland was a totally different story. Really, they came to us primarily because they were working in an on-premise applicant tracking system that was not going to be as flexible as their recruiters were hoping that it would be. So they came to Talemetry to help them figure out how to do candidate experience better, right? Because they weren't going to get that out of straight PeopleSoft. They wanted to know how to distribute jobs in a more automated and quick way and actually be able to track what was happening against those. And they wanted a way to do proactive direct sourcing. So those are kind of the three reasons why they came to Talemetry. And just focusing on the direct sourcing alone, they had until they rolled out Talemetry, they had full cycle recruiters throughout the entire organization. And when they rolled out Talemetry, they built a direct sourcing team that really was focused on supporting the recruiters in the field in those difficult to fill roles where they could help them out. And so they were using about 10 different sourcing databases, and so they were able to pull all of those into Talemetry and source from that. They were able to build on their applicant data, so they moved from an old ATS to PeopleSoft. We took all of the data from their old ATS, and then we now, over the last 3 years since they were live with PeopleSoft, continually to bring those applicants in as well as giving them access to all of these other databases. So they've seen their talent pool increase by 88% over the last 3 years, and this is no exaggeration. We've been able to help them reduce their advertising spend by millions of dollars, right? Now they were spent, and it's because they were spending too much, right? But they didn't know whether or not it was bringing any results because they didn't have the tracking mechanisms other than their ATS to measure what kind of conversion they were getting from all of their digital advertising. And so putting in a total CRM tool together with a marketing piece, they were able to see that as well. So just a couple of examples.
Okay, so we do have a couple of questions. I just want to let you know that you can go to telemetry.com if you want to learn more about our solutions that are integrated with Taleo and PeopleSoft and Oracle iRecruitment. We're an Oracle Gold partner. And we will be sending these slides around as well, as I said before. But Stephen, let me try and get, in the couple minutes we have, a couple questions in here. So with the Talemetry integration with Taleo, should we be able to track conversion rate from CRM marketing campaign to actual application, or would candidates need to be labeled as applied within the CRM?
Yep. I'm sorry. I'm going to say, would they need to be? Okay. So no, they don't need to be separately identified within CRM in the Taleo world, right? So what's basically going to happen is because we have a deep integration with Taleo, we're going to have all of your job data sitting in the CRM. Right, so you might be familiar with other CRM solutions where you also have to kind of create your job data inside, but we're just going to go ahead and pull that from Taleo directly. So you might want to send out a specific invite to apply for a specific job. And so number one, that email is going to automatically have the application URL that goes back into your Taleo system. So you have a really easy experience for your candidate to go back and apply for the job inside of Taleo. And then we have a synchronization with Taleo so that we're taking all of the applicant data back from Taleo into the CRM, and that data is going to have tell us that that person applied for that specific job in Talemetry. So it's going to be automatic. So you'll be able to open up a job inside of Talemetry and see everyone who's applied for that job from Taleo. And then also you are proactively sourcing against that job, right? Like you're treating that job in CRM as a project, and so you add pipeline candidates into that job. We're going to show you all of those in the same view. So you'll see the ones that you're pipelining for that job, and you'll see the ones who have applied for that job all in that job project. So probably more than you wanted, but hopefully that answers that question.
That's good. And unfortunately, we're out of time here. It is 11. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. There are a few more questions. We will respond to those individually after the program here. So again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Stephen. And everybody go out and make it a great day. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ian.